Hello and welcome to my channel Malavika's Magic. Today I'll be sharing with you my views on writing a research question. Let me take you to the roadmap of my presentation. So first I'll be talking about the concept, that is the meaning and purpose of research question. Second, I'll be dealing with the steps to write a research question. Third, I'll be talking about the process of writing a research question, that is the criteria for a good research question. Fourth, I'll be talking about how to evaluate the research question or the necessity to evaluate the research question and the appropriateness of the research question. So let us start with the first topic, that is the concept, where I'll be talking about the meaning and purpose of research question. Let me start with first understanding the meaning of a research question. Now, the research question is designed when the researcher undertakes a study or a research project and hopes that the research question will aim to answer the nature of the research project or the study. So the research question could be a question that addresses an issue or a problem that the researcher has identified. Secondly, the research question also outlines the various aspects of the study, and the questions are dynamic in nature. That is, the researcher can change the question after he has developed the framework of the study, or he has read relevant literature related to that particular issue or the problem that he has identified, and thereby he has had a proper understanding of the problem and in-depth knowledge about the problem, and accordingly he decides to change the research questions. So therefore we can say the researcher can change the question as they review related literature and develop a framework for the study. The larger the research projects, the research questions are more in number, whereas the smaller research projects have only one research question. So having understood the meaning of research question, let us now move on to the purpose of a research question. There are two purposes of research question. Number one, it helps in determining the type of research. And secondly, it helps to identify specific objectives. So when we talk about these two purposes, broadly, we can say that these two purposes helps to guide the design of the study. Then it also helps to state the specific issue related to the problem identified. And of course, it focuses on outcomes important for individuals to learn, as well as it breaks the study into manageable steps to help answer the initial question. Now, having dealt with the purpose, let us now move on to the second part of the topic, that is the steps to write a research question. Now, there are 6 steps that we should follow while writing a research question. The first is we should select a general topic, and then after selecting the general topic, we have to conduct preliminary research. And on the basis of the preliminary research, we also have to consider the audience perspective. That is, we need to understand the expectations of the audience, or rather what expectation that the audience has related to our research. And also we need to understand the needs of the audience, and accordingly we should proceed with our research. Having done that, we can generate potential questions related to the topic, and then we can also review our ideas, and then we can construct a research question accordingly. So having understood the 6 steps necessary to frame a research question, now let us move on to the framework for designing a research question. Now, there are 2 frameworks. The first is called as the PICOT framework, which implies that first we need to identify the population whom we are studying. So we could study a particular group, a particular population. We need to identify which group of people we are studying, or we need to identify the problem that we are studying. And then we also need to find out what intervention is required, or what intervention we are studying. That is, because of this particular aspect, there will be some changes in the population, or because of this particular aspect, there will be some changes in the problem that we have identified. Then we need to also find a comparison group. So thereby we can compare both the groups. So one group will have the intervention, the other group will not have the intervention, and accordingly the two groups can be compared, and on the basis of the comparison we can arrive at certain outcomes, and those outcomes will be of interest to us and also to the audience to whom we are targeting. And then of course we also need to have a time frame of the study. The second framework is called as the PEO framework, which again deals with the population or problem that is being studied. And of course we need to also expose this population to the pre-existing conditions, and then we need to find out the outcome. So we can say that the PICO-COT framework actually relates to a wider scope, in the sense we not only study the nature of the intervention or the nature of the problem, we also want to find out to what extent we can find solution to the problem, whereas the PEO only studies the nature of the problem and the exposure that the population has related to the pre-existing conditions, and we are only interested in the outcome of that particular exposure. So we are not concerned about the comparison aspect, that is, we are not comparing with another group, and therefore it has a limited scope, or it is particularly relevant for those studies where the researcher deals with a psychological issue, or it could be a medical issue, and therefore the comparison, the other group, that the comparison group is not necessary. But whereas in the PICOT format, the comparison group becomes necessary, especially for researchers who are dealing with the topics or linguistics, or dealing with social issues, or dealing with certain technical issues. So now we can move on to the next aspect of it, that is the third part, that is writing a research question, or the process of developing a research question. Now, the first thing that we need to find out is, when you are formulating a research question, is we need to identify the aim of research. So our aim of research could be descriptive or exploring in nature. It could be explaining and testing in nature, or it could be correlational, that is, we are trying to find out the two variables, and what is the nature of relation between these two variables. How do they have a positive relation, or do they have a negative relation, or or is there no relation at all? So let us understand each one of this in greater detail. So first is the descriptive research. In descriptive research, as we can understand, it describes a population, situation, or phenomenon, but this description is done accurately and systematically. And then we also say that it answers the question what, where, when, and how. So here we can see that it does not pertain to answer to the question why, because the descriptive research areas deal with topics that have not been explored in depth, or that are fairly new, and so therefore the why part is not taken into consideration in this type of research. So we are more concerned with what is the nature of the problem, where has the problem occurred, when did the problem occur, and how did it occur. Now let us move on to the next aspect, that is, it is an appropriate choice when the research aim is to identify characteristics, frequencies, trends, and categories. And then it is useful when much is not known yet about the problem, as I've already told you. Now let us move on to certain examples of the descriptive research questions. So here I have a few examples. The first is, do customers of company X prefer to use product X or product Y? So we are more concerned about which product the customers they prefer to use, rather than why they prefer to use. And then what are the most popular online news sources among under 18s? And then how prevalent is disease A in population B? So as you can see, this research question does not deal with the why aspect of it, and therefore, as we can see, these areas are fairly new, or or rather in-depth analysis or in-depth research in this particular area has not been taken under consideration. And so therefore, it is necessary that this descriptive research, is required in this particular area. So now let us move on to the research methods that is required in descriptive research. The first is we can use surveys, because the surveys, they helped us to analyze frequencies, averages, and patterns. That is, we can give questionnaire to people and then find out what are the averages, or related to the behavior of people, or what pattern we can identify in the behavior of people, and so on. And then we can actually use the surveys in order to analyze the public opinion on political and social topics, or evaluate the satisfaction of the customers with the company's product or organization services, and of course describe the demographics of a country or region. And then we can use also the observation method, whereby we gather data without having to rely on the honesty and accuracy of respondents. And it is often used by market researchers to understand how people act in real life situations. We can also use the case studies in order to describe the characteristics of a specific subject, such as a person, group, or an organization, or gather detailed data to identify the characteristics of a narrowly defined subject. Now, let us move on to the next type of research, that is exploratory research. Exploratory research investigates research questions that has previously not been studied in depth. That is, it is fairly a new idea, or it is a research that has not been dealt with, and so therefore it requires further research. So we understand more about a particular topic of interest. So examples of research questions could be: what factors influence mental health in undergraduates? What outcomes are associated with an authoritative parenting style? Or in what ways does the presence of a non-native accent affect intelligibility? So these are the various examples of research questions in an exploratory research. And now let us move on to the methods that could be used in exploratory research. So we can conduct exploratory research using primary research. That is, we can conduct using survey. That is, we can actually take information from the participants, where the participants can be of the focus groups, or the interview, can conduct interviews, or we can circulate a questionnaire to the people and ask them to fill the questionnaire, and on the basis of that we can conduct the research. The secondary research is basically we can deal with case studies which has already been conducted and it is available online. So we can collect information, online polls, surveys, interviews, social media. We can collect information from this secondary research, that is, which is already available to us through online sources. Now, let us move on to the next type of research, that is explanatory research. Explanatory research explores why something occurs when limited information is available. Now, from this, we can understand that the explanatory research answers the question why, and so therefore it is very important, and it is also called as the causal research. That is, the two variables are identified. One is the independent variable and the other is a dependent variable, and the independent variable becomes the cause, and due to which the changes in independent variable will have an effect on the dependent variable. So this is called as the causal research. And this research is important because it is also called as experimental in nature, and therefore it is quite valuable. So it helps in increasing our understanding of a given topic, ascertain how or why a particular phenomenon is occurring, and it predicts future occurrences. It is also considered, as I told you, as causal research. It investigates patterns and trends in existing data that haven't been previously investigated. So when we are using the experimental research, we are trying to deal with an absolutely new area, or an area that hasn't been explored so far, and so therefore it becomes experimental in nature. The examples of research questions could be: why do undergraduate engineering students obtain higher average grade in the first semester than in the second semester? Why do multilingual individuals show more risky behavior during business negotiations than monolingual individuals. So having understood explanatory research questions, let us now move on to the explanatory research methods. So we can have interviews, we can conduct interviews, we can have focus groups, we can have pilot studies, we can have observations, we can have experiments that are being conducted using, these are the various research methods that can be used, in an explanatory research. Now let us move to the correlational research. In the correlational research, as I told you, it is non-experimental research method, and it measures two variables and assesses the statistical relationship between them. The types could be positive correlation, negative correlation, or no correlation. The methods could be observation, survey, and documentary research. So now let us move on to the next topic, that is evaluating a research question. That is the process of developing a research question. So when we evaluate, we are going to talk about that we need to ask ourselves certain questions when we are formulating or when we have already formulated a research question. So those questions could be, is the question clear and easy to understand? So we need to reflect on the research questions that we have designed. Then, does it cover a well-defined area of a subject? Has it already been answered by other researchers? What makes it interesting and worthy of research? Is the scope well-defined and achievable? Does it interest you? So all these questions have to be asked or reflected upon when we are designing a research question, or when we have already designed a research question, and now it is time to evaluate a research question in order to find out the appropriateness of the research question. So then we can say, I can give you an example of this. So first, if I have designed a research question like this, what is the effect of global warming on crop production? Now, when I look at those questions, I can find out that this is not a complete research question, because it does not tell you actually what aspect of global crop production or which particular type of crop we are looking at. So if I have to rephrase this research question, I can write it like this: what is the effect of global warming on cereal crop production? But still, I'm not talking about any particular region. And so therefore, I need to further modify it. So what is the effect of global warming on cereal crop production in India? But when I'm talking about in India, it is a vast area. The scope is very large. It is not manageable by me. So therefore, I have to narrow down my area. So when I narrow it down, it could be in this manner: what is the effect of global warming on cereal crop production in the western region in India? So with this example, I hope you have understood how to formulate a research question and what are the how to evaluate a research question also. With this, I would like to thank you all for your patient listening. In case you have any questions related to research questions, you can definitely put it in the comment section. I will reply to your query. Thank you once again.